Good evening, everyone. And welcome to Cuisine's first ever Masterclass series. This is the third and final night. Justin North is a Blenheim boy, one of Blenheim's finest exports, but has spent most of his career overseas, many of them in Michelin-star restaurants in Europe. In November 2001, Justin and his wife Georgia opened the Cass in Surrey Hills in Sydney. And Justin has won Best Restaurant, Best Chef, and every other best thing in between since then. To boot, he's one of the nicest guys in the business, and we're thrilled to have him over from Sydney, so please give him a round of applause.
I'm Justin North, owner of the Cass restaurant in Sydney. I was born in New Zealand and did my apprenticeship in Wellington before I moved to Sydney to get a bit of restaurant experience, and then I moved over to the UK where I did a lot of training with some European chefs for a few years.
It's absolutely wonderful to be here, and thank you all so very, very much for coming along tonight.
First thing I'll be cooking tonight is a Marlborough Sound salmon, which has been marinated in citrus salt, slowly cooked and served with a beautiful little salad of spanner crab meat and golden beetroots.
The first dish, the salmon, I've got a beautiful fillet here. What I normally use in Sydney is a pt1 ocean trout, which is probably a little bit less fatty and slightly firmer texture than the salmon. What we're going to do is we're going to remove the shoulder piece of the fillet, and then the belly comes straight off like so, and then we're going to remove the skin. Marinate it first. So in our mortar and pestle, we get some flake salt. The quantities don't matter too much for this. It sort of depends on your own personal taste, because we're basically using the salt for two things. One as a vessel to carry and impart the flavour, and another one is to cure the fish as well. So we're just going to zest it into there and trying to capture all those sprays and oils that come off. Nearly had a little bit of finger. So you can see a little bit of salt and the citrus fruits. Now to this, sometimes I add a little pinch of sugar as well, and that not so much for the sweetness, but it just takes away a bit of the harshness of the salt. It doesn't take too much of an effort, and when you're done, you get this beautiful coloured salt. And the best thing about it is the amazing aroma. We'll take a little bit of this off, and then we just remove the bloodline as well, so you can see that sort of dark coloured bit of the bloodline on there. And then, so what we're going to do is you basically just onto a little dish is add the citrus salt. Just make a nice little cube. Stick that on there. Obviously you can do the whole fillet, and then you just cover it with the salt. And the amount of time you want to cure it will depend on sort of what you're after. Like we're going to cook this in a little bit of oil at about 45 degrees for around about 15 minutes. It'll obviously depend on the thickness of the fish, but you can, if you wanted it fully cured, then you could cure it for sort of overnight up to 8 to 12 hours. If you just wanted to sort of flavour a little bit, then you could do anywhere from sort of 2 to 4 hours. And again, it'll depend on the thickness of your seafood. So once it's cured, you want to get your oil at around about 40 degrees. Now you can use lots of different things for this oil. I often use a blend of olive oil, neutral oil such as a grapeseed oil, and sometimes a little bit of duck fat as well.
This particular dish we've played with, well, not so much a dish, but a technique we've played with quite a lot over the years, and it's sort of constantly evolving, and we'll often play around with different salts, different flavours, whether we're using salmon or ocean trout. It's something that's been in our repertoire for many, many years. We sort of learnt it in Europe when I was training earlier on, and it's one of our signatures that we keep evolving and changing quite a lot.
Has anyone used golden beetroots before? So they're just the same as red beetroots, except for yellow. We're going to poach these in a solution made of water, a little bit of saffron, some Chardonnay vinegar, and a touch of salt and sugar. So into the water, a little pinch of sugar, some salt, some saffron. It's more just to sort of accentuate the colour, not so much the flavour of it. When they're poached, sometimes they lose a lot of their colour, so they can sort of end up quite pale, like so. But once they're cooked, we make the beautiful glaze, they end up this wonderful, beautiful, rich golden colour. So we've got a salt, we've got a sugar, a little touch of Chardonnay vinegar, and then we'll just trim up the beetroots ever so slightly, just taking off a little bit of the root and the stems. That's probably not far off being ready. You can see how that just sort of flakes away really beautifully like that. And it's a wonderful way of sort of, and that's ready to eat when you can sort of pull it apart like that. This is what you don't want, but it's a good, just so you can see. You can see that those little white proteins coming out of the fish. But it happens a lot when you're in a dry environment like the oven. By submerging it in the oil mixture, then it just, obviously as you can see, it protects the natural flavour and that of the fish, and most importantly the texture. Now, when we go to plate this up, we get a little bit of spanner crab in your dish. So a little handful of crab meat, and then depending on what's in season, you can use a whole host of different types of leaf. Shiso is one of my favourites for this, as well as these little red chard leaves. A little bit of baby coriander and baby watercress as well. There's a nice little balance in there. So you're getting all these sort of interesting techniques and flavours, a little crunch from the stem, a little bit of perfume from the different flavours. And we add a good sort of pinch into our crab, and then you can keep that as a nice sort of dry salad like that, but I think what's really nice sometimes is if you add a little drizzle of olive oil. If you want that acidity, a little bit of fresh lemon juice. We're basically making like a little lemon vinaigrette in the bowl, and then a pinch of salt. So we just toss it around, put our little piece of salmon in the middle of a plate, and then make a lovely little salad. Just spoon that around. And this is a lovely dish as well to either have as a main course or as a lovely little entree.
The key to this dish, first and foremost, is the freshness of your ingredients, along with the real gentle cooking process, so the fish doesn't tighten and harden and dry out, and you get those horrible white proteins coming out of the seafood. It stays beautiful and soft and delicious. So the quality of the produce and the cooking time and temperature is probably the two key elements of this dish.